Welcome to the Empowerment Hour, a podcast dedicated to the woman ready to take charge of her life, live in her purpose, and be unapologetically authentic. I am your host, Nancy Ruffin, award-winning author, mommypreneur, and the self-proclaimed Latina Oprah who is dedicated to helping women unleash their power, discover their purpose, and live up to their fullest potential. My goal is to empower you, inspire you, and help you unlock your passions and discover your purpose so that you live the most fulfilled and impassioned life. If you're ready to make a change and start living on purpose, then you're in the right place. Let's get started. Welcome back to another episode of the Empowerment Hour podcast. It's your girl, Nancy Ruffin, and as always, thank you for blessing me with your presence for another episode, for another week. I'm happy to be here. This week has been full of so many amazing things. I celebrated my brother-in-law's 40th birthday this week. Happy birthday, Jahani. And it's always so great when I can be with my family and when we can just spend time and celebrate. And this week was just super special because it's almost like a tradition in my family that like on the day of our birthday, my sister, bakes a cake and we all gather together as a family, all like 10, 12 of us. And we sing happy birthday and we eat cake. And then she also had a surprise birthday party for him this past weekend, which was incredible. Probably one of the best parties I've ever been to. But even more important than that, it was just the fact that so many of our close friends and family had come together to celebrate this milestone. And we had one of our friends fly in from Florida to celebrate with us. So it was almost kind of like a mini reunion and celebration all mixed into one. So it was really great. Something else that kind of happened this week for me. On Friday, I attended the retirement party for my boss, who had been with our organization for 40 years. I think 1978, they said she started. I was 1 year old, which was insane as I sat there and listened to everyone give these speeches about her and like her contribution to our organization, all of these past 4 decades. I was just really in awe of her. And it was a great reminder of how significant our impact to this world is, right? Because I think that when we're doing something and when we're at a job or when we're working and we're doing the day-to-day activities, it's really hard for us to see what our contribution is and what the impact is. But after 40 years, when you can step back and see the accumulation of all of those activities and your contribution is like, wow, amazing. When I think about what they were saying about her and how she really took our department and made it to what it is today. When she started, everything was on paper, everything was manual. And, we're in healthcare, so we're a highly regulated industry. And she always managed to be innovative, to think outside the box. She, brought the corporation, on to computers and, tried as best as she could to automate everything. And even with, the changing regulations and laws as they relate to healthcare, she always thought about innovative ways to make the system do a lot of the work. And so it was important. It was like an aha moment for me when I saw that, when we're working and we're doing our little bit every single day, we think that it's not enough. We think that it's not making an impact. But really what it is that it's cementing our legacy. And that makes me feel great just because of this work that I do. And oftentimes I feel like it's not enough, or like I'm not doing enough, or like I'm not being seen, or I'm not being heard, because growth takes time, right? And I know this. I know that it doesn't happen overnight, but yet and still, when you're in it and when you're doing it, all we ever want is to be seen and to be acknowledged and to feel like our work matters. But which is why, I'm committed to this, and it's why I do what I do, because I know that in the long run, 40 years from now, I will have cemented my legacy. I would have made a significant impact on this world, on society. My contributions are going to be great. And this is something that I want you guys to think about within your own lives too. And it doesn't necessarily have to be in the same way that I'm doing my contribution, but even in your own small way, in your own organization, in your household, amongst your peers, understand that there is something that you bring to everything that you touch. And no matter how small or insignificant it may appear to be at the moment, understand that that is part of a bigger plan. Okay, all of these small little steps, all of these small activities, they all lead to greatness. Even if the greatness is something that you can see, even if the greatness is something that only affects your life and your family, understand that that is important. Don't ever minimize what your contribution to this world is, because we are all here to contribute something. And that's what you have to be committed to. That is what you have to wake up every day knowing that whatever actions you're taking that day in some way is impacting and influencing the vibration of the world. And whether it's affecting one person or 1,000 people, understand that it's important. So with that, I want to kind of get into our weekly roundup. This week has been really interesting because there's a lot of things that have been going on in the news. And one of the things that I really wanted to touch upon was the Larry Nasser case. And if you are unfamiliar with Larry Nasser, he is the Michigan State University doctor who was employed to treat the gymnast from the USA Gymnastics organization there. And this week was his sentencing because Mr. Nasser has been convicted of sexually molesting, or like sexual molestation and child pornography. And he abused or molested over 150 girls. And not women, but young girls. As young as 11 and 12, 13, 14, 15. And this is a man who was entrusted to take care of these young girls whenever they got injured, or whenever, they needed medical care, or they needed to seek medical attention. He was the one that was responsible for making them better and making them well. And he totally abused that power and took advantage of these young girls and completely destroyed their lives. And so this week, the judge presiding over his case sentenced him to 175 years in jail. And during the sentencing, she didn't mince words. She was very clear about how she felt about him. She called him a predator. She said that he didn't deserve to walk out of a prison ever, that he was irresponsible in not being able to control his urges, that, I mean, she just let him have it. And, she caught a lot of flack for that because a lot of people believed that it was too much. But in my opinion, it wasn't enough. He ruined the lives of over 150 young girls. And how do they rebuild, from that? How do they move forward when someone who they trusted to take care of them violated their trust? How do you forgive? How do you forgive someone like that? How do you forgive someone who hurts you in such a way that it affects your physical, mental, spiritual well-being? And forgiveness is what we're going to be talking about on today's podcast. So I really wanted to kind of talk about weekly roundup issues that centered on forgiveness. And, another thing, something else that was in the news or that I kind of watched this week was Jay-Z. He had a interview on CNN, the Van Jones show. And during the interview, Van Jones, touched upon everything that has been happening in Jay-Z's, most recent life. He talked about the incredible success that Jay-Z's album 444 has had. In fact, the Grammys are happening this weekend, and Jay-Z's album is nominated for like 8 Grammys. But more importantly than that, in the album, he's really open and honest. He talks about so much. He talks about infidelity. He talks about the transgressions that he had against Beyonce. And in the Van Jones interview, Van Jones kind of addresses that. And, Jay-Z was very, I think, candid about his marriage. And I'm just trying to bring something up here because, Van Jones, in no uncertain terms, asked him, like, why was his marriage so special? Why was it worth fighting for so much? And to that, Jay-Z replied, you can be so in love with someone, and if you have an experienced love, and if you don't understand it or have the tools to move forward, then you're going to have complications. You can either address it or pretend until it blows up at some point. For us, we chose to fight for our love, for our family, to give our kids a different outcome, to break that cycle for Black men and women. End quote. And for me, being someone who is married, I have never had to deal with infidelity in my own marriage, not anything that I was aware of. We've had, God knows, we've had our own share of issues, but that was never really one of them. But I would imagine that if I was in those shoes, would it be so easy to walk away from my marriage like many women believe to be? Like, there's so many men and women who say if their spouse cheats on them that they wouldn't forgive them, that is an unforgivable act. And I don't know what to believe about that, because I think that every marriage is different. I think every situation is different. And because we're all individuals who come into our relationships with certain beliefs based on what we've seen as children, based on our own experiences in relationships, sometimes we don't have the proper tools to navigate within a partnership, right? And sometimes when we don't have examples of what healthy relationships are or what they should look like, we just don't know. And so we're often, in these situations trying to navigate through them as best as we can. And, so I really commend Jay-Z and Beyonce for fighting for their marriage, because marriage isn't easy, and I think that the easy thing to do is to walk out. The easy thing to do is to let go, and is to say, you know what, you cheated, so I'm out. Like, I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to dig into the dirt and talk about what caused the cheating. What was it that led to that? And sometimes it has nothing to do with the spouse, right? Because cheating doesn't have to do, it's not about the other person, about what they're doing or not doing. Cheating is a choice, is an individual choice that you make, that we make, to step out on our partner. And that is because there's something that is lacking within ourselves that we are seeking. And it's different for every person. And so I know that for Jay-Z, he really talked and commended the fact that him and Beyonce went to therapy and worked through their issues. Because people don't want to sit in the muck. People don't want to sit in their dirty, ugly mess. And sometimes therapy, that's what that forces you to do. It really forces you to look at yourself and the role that you play in the creation of your life and in the choices that you make, and how those choices impact not only yourself, but those people that you claim that you love. And in the interview, he says that Beyonce is his soulmate, and that's the woman that he loves. Yet and still, though, he cheated on her. And so it's important to get to the root cause of that, because why would someone who says they love you, who says you're their soulmate, why would they do the one thing that would cause you the most pain, the most heartbreak, the most hurt? Right? It has nothing to do with her, and nothing that she's doing or not doing. It has everything to do with him. That's why, therapy and making sure that our mental health is in order is so important to everything, to every relationship that we have in our lives. And if you don't understand yourself, if you don't understand why you're built the way that you are, if you don't understand why you react to situations a certain way, you're going to repeat the same things. And so while I don't condone cheating, I do respect a man or a woman that is able to own up to their mistakes, who's able to say, you know what, I did this and I messed up and I don't want to do this again. So I'm going to work on making sure that doesn't happen. And the way that you do that is that you come clean and you talk about it. Forgiveness, a lot of people think that forgiveness is for the weak, and I beg to differ. I actually think that the capacity to forgive, that takes an incredibly strong person. Weak people can't forgive because they can't get past their own hurt and their own pain and their own ego, because it becomes about them when really it's not. When people hurt us, it's not about us, really. It's about what they're doing. It's about how they view themselves and the lack of self-work that they've done on themselves. Because healthy people don't hurt people, right? They say hurt people hurt people. That's where that comes from. And so forgiveness is only something that a strong person could do, because you have to be able to acknowledge that this person has hurt you, but you're not going to hold on to that. Forgiveness means letting go, meaning that you're not going to forget, but you're not going to hold on anymore to that pain or that hurt or any of the negative feelings that is attached to that experience. And I don't know, man. Like, when I was younger, I had a really hard time with forgiveness, but that's because I had a lot of growing up to do myself. And I think that because I've been doing so much self work these past 10 years on myself, I now have an incredible capacity to forgive. I can even forgive people who don't ask for forgiveness, because what I know and what I understand is that no one is perfect, and I'm not perfect. And if I'm unable to forgive other people for their mistakes and for their humanness, then that means I'm saying that I could never be forgiven for anything that I do. And I don't want that. I want to be able to make mistakes, because I will, because I'm human, because we all make mistakes. And I want that when I make those mistakes and that I recognize them, that whoever I have hurt unintentionally or intentionally, whatever the case may be, that I may be forgiven. We're all sinners, and the fact that I sin or have sinned and I've made mistakes and I've hurt people and God has forgiven me, why would I not forgive someone else? There's a scripture in the Bible that says, let he who has not sinned cast the first stone. And I think we're all sinners. There's not one person out in this world that has never made a mistake, that has never hurt someone, even if it's been unintentionally. And I think that we have to own that. And we can't hold people to different standards than we hold ourselves. We can't expect other people to be perfect and to never make mistakes when we ourselves are not perfect human beings. I mean, it's just not, it's just not right. We have to be able to, I don't know, just be able to let go and move forward and know that forgiveness is not even about the other person, really. Forgiveness is about making sure that we are not holding on to that negative experience and that hurt so much so that it's going to affect us emotionally and health-wise. Because when we hold on to shit that is not conducive to our well-being, that has a really heavy toll on us. And I was reading something the other day that attaches forgiveness to resentment. And meaning, like our ability, if we're not able to forgive, that turns into resentment. And then that resentment becomes our prison. And I want you guys to understand, though, that forgiveness is not something that happens overnight. Like, it's a journey, right? Because you have to be able to work through the hurt and through the pain and through the anger. And that takes time. But as you work through that and toward that, you'll find that in the end, it's worth the effort. Because even if this other person who hurt you doesn't ask for forgiveness, you have already released it. You have let it go. So now it's not even a part of you anymore. And you're able to move forward. The ability for us to forgive is rooted in being forgiven ourselves. And it's like I said, that people who have been hurt often hurt others. And so we have to be able to recognize that when someone is hurting us, it's only because of some kind of hurt or pain that they haven't worked through. And it might even be subconscious because they might not even realize it. None of us are flawless. And I think that by human nature, we have a tendency to just mistreat one another. Again, based on our own experiences. And we have to remember it. We all make mistakes. I really love to hear what you guys think about forgiveness. How have you been able to forgive? How have you not been able to forgive? Are there any things that are just unforgivable that nothing, could be done? For me, I would hope not. I would hope that I always maintain my capacity to forgive. And should the time ever come or present itself where, and God forbid, I hope this never happens, but that I find myself in a situation where I can't forgive, that God would help me through that phase. I never want to hold on to pain or hurt like that, for a long period of time where I wouldn't be able to forgive the person who has hurt me. And if you guys get a chance, and if Jay-Z, if you're a Jay-Z fan and you're interested in hearing more of the Van Jones interview, it's on demand on CNN. I watched it earlier. And it's just really interesting to hear a man own up to his shit, and to talk about it and to acknowledge how he really needed to seek therapy. He really needed to talk to someone to work through his shit. And there's no shame in that. And I think that particularly for communities of color, there's been a stigma put on therapy and on the importance of mental health. And a lot of times we're just taught to deal with it, right? We're taught to not talk about our problems because we have to be strong. But there's no strength if you're hurting. There's no strength if you're continuously making poor choices because you have not been able to work through and talk through your experiences that have led you to that particular place and point in time where you're making these decisions and choices that are not in your best interest. And being able to acknowledge that and accept it and say it and ask for help, that takes incredible strength. And so, I commend Jay-Z. I commend everyone who has the strength and is courageous enough and brave enough to say, you know what, I need to speak to someone. Because I will tell you, the ones who suffer in silence will be the ones who are miserable for the rest of their lives, are the ones who are going to continue to make bad choices. And what kind of life is that? Like, why wouldn't you want to be happy and carefree and healthy? And if talking to a therapist can help you get to that place, why wouldn't you want to do it? Like, there's no shame in that. It's not embarrassing. And sometimes when I hear that, it also makes me think about our own inability to forgive ourselves. Because there's a reason why we don't want to talk to someone. There's a reason that we're hiding or don't want to share, right? And sometimes a lot of that's rooted in shame. But we have to be able to be vulnerable and open up and trust. And I think that trust is something that we also struggle with, trust and forgiveness. We have to be able to trust ourselves and each other enough and be able to forgive ourselves. Because once you forgive, you can let go and you can move on. And if you're not forgiving and you're holding on to that, that is a heavy burden to carry forever. You're going to always have that chip on your shoulder. And for what? Don't ever give someone that much power over you. Ever. If someone has hurt you, forgive them. Not saying you have to forget. Not saying that you have to allow them back into your life in the same capacity that they were before. But forgive them and move on. Not for them, but for you. And so with that, I am going to end this week's podcast. I hope this was helpful. I really would love to hear your thoughts on forgiveness and what that means to you. So shoot me an email. You can hit me up at nancy@thefiercewoman.org. You can shoot me a DM on my Instagram, or you can hit me up on Facebook. Either way, just let me know. Let's have a dialogue. Let's talk about this, and if you're on Twitter, hit me up at I am Nancy Ruffin and we can continue the dialogue there. So until next time, mi gente, go out there, stay focused, stay committed, and crush some goals.